Hi everyone, it's Kim Vopney, the Vagina Coach, and in this video we are going to go through a few different unconventional ways to lengthen the pelvic floor and release tension. So these are all good for people who have been told their pelvic floor is too tight or they have a hypertonic pelvic floor. Let's get started. So there's a couple things that we're going to use in this series of exercises. I have a rolled up towel. You could also use a pool noodle, but this I think is more accessible to most people. Pretty much everybody has a towel. So we're gonna have a small towel rolled up. I'm also gonna use a small squishy ball. So these are things you can get at kids' toy stores, and I've semi-inflated it so it's quite squishy. The other thing that I'm using is, this is designed by a physiotherapist in Canada, and it's called the Cooch ball. So again, I have it not inflated all the way. When this particular one is inflated more, it makes it a little more intense, the sensation. So having it a little bit less inflated is a little less intense. I'm also going to use a chair, and I've got a mat underneath me because we are going to be on our knees for a little bit as well. So you might want to have a yoga mat or a couple things, even a couple of extra towels nearby. So let's start with the towel. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sit on it with it lengthwise. So I'm going to show you here, this is the pelvis, and we're going to sit on it like this. And I want the vulva, so here's your vulva. I want your vulva on the surface of the towel. So I'm just going to roll that up nice and snug. And I'm going to put it underneath me and sit on it. And again, my vulva is on the surface of the towel. I have a hard surface chair. If you were on a softer surface, it would be a little bit less intense. And this is not super comfortable, but that's part of the point. So it's introducing a sensation of discomfort, and we're learning how to relax and how to let go of tension. So you can kind of think about so I have skeleton pants on that I'm going to show you a few things with, and I'm also going to show you on the pelvis here. So these are our two sits bones. So ideally when we're sitting on the vulva and the front part of the two sit bones. So as you're sitting here, our vulva is on the surface of our towel, and you can think about the two sit bones gliding away, almost like they're expanding or lengthening away from one another. I want you to think about the space between the pubic joint, the two sit bones, and the tailbone expanding. So all those 4 points expanding away from one another. And you can also think about the muscles themselves letting go of tension. So whether you think about maybe ice cream or butter melting, whatever you can do to think of softening and letting go. This is a really good exercise actually in preparation for birth. I know not all of you watching are going to be pregnant, or maybe you've never been pregnant, never will be pregnant. That's fine. The principles still stay the same. But for those of you that are or will be at some point in your life, this is a really good exercise for birth prep. Okay, so that's been about 30 seconds-ish. I'm going to take that out and notice what's changed. And there's, first of all, is a bit of a relief because I'm not sitting on my towel anymore, which is really nice. But there's a sense of openness. There's a sense of more space. I feel like I'm a little bit more in contact with that chair. So that's a nice feeling. So just make sure that you take note of what has changed in your body. It helps us with that mind-body connection to kind of process any sort of change that has happened. So that was our first exercise. Now what I want you to do is we're going to sit on this on one sit bone. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm sitting still with my vulva on the surface of the chair, but the towel is going to be underneath that one sit bone. And I showed you in a different video where we kind of go up and down, and we use that as a way to actually take the muscles through their range of motion. In this one, all we're doing is allowing the other side to sink down into the chair, and this sit bone stays on the towel. And then we again visualize those two sit bones gliding away from one another. We imagine space between those 4 points, so like they're expanding away. We think about ice cream melting. You can also close your eyes. I know you're watching me, but you can just listen to my voice. You can close your eyes and connect in with your pelvic floor and think about lengthening and opening. And you're probably also going to notice in this position that you feel a little bit of kind of stretching and sensation in your side body as well. So you're going to feel it mostly in the side body of that low side. And we're just allowing that other sit bone almost to be lengthened away from the one that's on the towel. Okay, and then we're going to come out of this very slowly. So just sort of shift your weight off to the side that is not on the towel, and then just slowly take the towel out and come back down. Again, notice what has changed. So this side, now I feel like I almost have a lump right where this sit bone is. This side feels totally soft and open and completely bone free almost. So let's invite that same thing on the other side. So I'm going to put my sit bone on that towel and allow this side to sink down slowly. So we're not doing any Kegels, we're not doing any core breathing, we're just being here. This is more of an allowing rather than a doing type exercise. And get in your visualizations, think about your ice cream melting, close your eyes if you need to. And make sure through any of these that we've already done and anything that we're going to be doing that you don't start to sink and tuck your bum under. So nod that pubic joint forward so that you're on that sit bone. So we have a tendency to sit and stand more like this, where the tailbone can sometimes be on the surface of the chair. So we want to nod that pubic joint forward so that we are on the front part of the two sit bones and the vulva. So the tailbone is way out from underneath the chair, and the two hip bones are in the same plane as the pubic joint. Okay, so I'm just going to hang out here a little bit longer, feeling the lengthening and sort of stretching sensation in my the low left side of my back here as well. Making sure you're not holding your breath, so not doing the core breath, but just making sure that your breath is still going through its range of motion, that you're not holding it. And again, we'll slowly take that out, shifting over to the low side. Take your towel out and let it come down. And now that what I felt was like the lump in that sit bone is gone, and now I feel nice and sort of spread out, if that's a good way to describe it. I sort of feel lower, I feel wider almost on the chair. So there's no right answer as to what you feel, but ideally you feel some sort of change. You want to hold these for up to 30 seconds, and if it's really painful, then it's not right for you, and maybe get a less dense towel, less tightly rolled up, a softer surface chair that you're sitting on. Or maybe just don't do it all together. It's not right for you. We don't want to inflict pain. A little bit of discomfort is okay, but we don't want any pain. Okay, the next one we're going to do is let's take our couch ball. Similar to what we did with the towel, except now I'm going to be sitting on the ball. So just to give you a reference point here, this again would be neutral where I'm sitting. So I'll turn it forward, and the ball will be right underneath my vulva. So lift it up and come back down. Now this is a really, really strong sensation, so I'm not going to sit here for very long. Again, if I had a softer surface, maybe put a pillow on top of your chair, or maybe do this on top of an ottoman, or maybe even like a cushioned dining chair. And I'm sitting with it right on the vulva, so I'm thinking about this sort of the sides almost enveloping the ball. And I want to stay in a nice neutral pelvis position. And we can also do this on the ground. So I'm going to show you a different version. What I'm finding in my own body is being upright here is I'm tense in and around my legs, which is sort of defeating the purpose, because I want to lengthen and release tension all around my pelvis. So I don't think this is necessarily serving me. I think me doing this on an ottoman would be better. But let's take it off the chair and move it down to the ground. So I'm going to sort of sit in a tall kneel position and then sit back down on the ball. And this is much more acceptable to my pelvic floor today. So my heels are outside of my bums. I'm not sitting on my bum. My heels are kind of out to the side. For anybody who has any difficulty with their knees, you could roll up towels and put them underneath your knees and hopefully make that a little bit more accessible for you. Again, I'm in that neutral pelvis, and you could do a little bit of kind of swaying back and forth. You could do a little bit tuck and untuck to get a bit of kind of motion going in there. You could do some circles on the ball. Make sure you go in both directions. So those are all things you can do if you like. You can also just stay in one static position. Now, as I mentioned, the cooch ball is quite intense. So if you feel like that's too much, then grab your squishy ball and we'll be in that same position. And again, this also feels better for me on my pelvic floor. It's a little bit more forgiving, I would say. It's not quite as directed. It's a little bit more global. But some people like the directed. So it's really a trial and error type thing and see which one works best for you. So again, here, the nice thing about having a ball is that it has some motion to it. So it can allow us to explore a few different angles, do some circular motions, some tuck and untuck, some kind of like hula dance movements almost. So you can just play around there. And all of this is really working to lengthen and release tension all throughout this group of muscles. Remember, there's 3 layers of muscles. It's not just one muscle, it's 3 layers. There's multiple muscles in there. And they can sometimes get a little bit sticky. Sometimes we have a bit of tension in there. So we're trying to let that go. So I'm going to take that ball out now. And what I want to do now is show you, I'm actually going to turn around so you're going to look at my bum. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to illustrate something with the pelvis pants. So if you can see here, this is as if you're looking through the pelvis and you can see the tailbone behind me. Here's the 2 front hip bones, and then I've got, so it's like my pelvis is right here. And this is what you're kind of seeing as you're looking through here. You can see the sacrum and then back down to the tailbone. So I'm going to turn around here and you can see the sacrum and you can see the tailbone down at the end here. And you can see these 2 sits bones. So if you remember, these are the 2 sits bones here. So I'm just highlighting them. And what I want you to notice is these pants don't have muscles on them, but basically the black area, and even on top of where the bones are, there would be muscles. And when my hamstrings, so the backs of my legs, are tight, it pulls my pelvis underneath me. So that can hold us in that posterior pelvic tilt, which can contribute to tension. So we want to make sure that we are lengthening, almost think about lifting that sacrum up towards the sky. You can think about your sits bones also spreading and sort of lifting. So that in and of itself can be a bit of a release for some people. I'm going to bring my chair in front of me here. And now what I'm going to do is I've got my toes tucked and my heels pointed upwards. And all I'm going to do is just think about sitting back while imagining my sacrum lifting or floating up towards the sky. So this in and of itself is a bit of a release for the pelvic floor. I could also sit down on my heels and come upright. I find leaning forward gets a little bit more stretch into the inner thighs, into the glutes, and into the pelvic floor. And we can just stay here. So this is kind of like, it's like a supported child's pose almost. I can take my legs a little bit wider. If you find that the stretch on the bottom of your feet is too great, you can untuck your toes and you'll sit back down a little bit lower. And again, we can rock back and forth. And you can also just stay here and then rest your head down on the surface of your chair. And for those that have it available to them, you can also put a bolster in front of you and come down a little bit lower. And then the final thing that we can do here is I'm going to come back up. I'm going to tuck my toes under again and bring one leg closer into the midline, and then I'm going to extend one foot out to the side. And this in and of itself could be where you stay. This is quite a good stretch for glutes into the pelvic floor, into the inner thighs as well. If you'd like to add a little bit more, you're going to sit that bum back again, thinking about the sacrum sort of floating upwards so that you're not tucking your pelvis under. So we don't want to be here. You want to be reaching, almost like you're reaching your bum hole, your anus backwards behind you, and sit back down. And holding it here. Because these are a little bit more active, meaning the leg that is supporting me here is a bit more active, I may not stay quite as long, but I'll do a few different repetitions. Make sure you keep breathing. And I'm going to come up and do the same thing on the other side. So tucking that toe, reach that leg out to the side. And I keep my toes flexed. You could point your toes if you like. And then again, if you have it available to you, you can sit back down. So this is also getting the bottoms of the feet, another part, especially on my body, that is very, very tight. So I really love lengthening and releasing tension from the bottom of my feet. Really feeling it in my inner thighs. And remembering to check in with your breath, make sure you're not holding it. And slowly come out. So feel free to go through that cycle again or as many times as you need. I hope you enjoyed that pelvic floor lengthening routine. Some unconventional ways. We have so much opportunity in so many different ways that we can work on relaxing and releasing tension in that group of muscles. Remember that tight muscles don't mean strong muscles. Sometimes in order to find our strength and to overcome things like incontinence and organ prolapse, we actually need to relax and let go of tension initially, and then remind that pelvic floor of its full range of motion. Thanks for participating in this pelvic floor lengthening workout with me today. We'll see you next time.